Before America was born, before freedom was a word whispered in the dark, there were ordinary men and women who risked everything to make it real. They were farmers, blacksmiths, sailors, and slaves, bound not by power, but by belief. This is not a tale of generals or kings, but of a blacksmith's son who learned that liberty is not granted by victory, but earned by sacrifice. In a war fought with muskets and ideals, he discovers that the hardest battle is not against an empire, but against fear, betrayal, and the temptation to give up hope. Chapter 1. Whispers of Liberty, 1773 to 1774. The morning mist hung low over Boston Harbor, veiling the ships like ghosts waiting for judgment. The scent of salt and smoke drifted inland through crooked cobblestone streets, where men in wool coats hurried past one another, speaking in hushed tones. The air itself seemed restless, charged with something invisible yet unmistakable, the tension of a people on the edge of change. Thomas Hale stood outside his master's blacksmith shop, hammer in hand, sleeves rolled to his elbows. Sparks leapt with each strike against the iron blade he was shaping, lighting his soot-streaked face. He was 21, broad-shouldered, and born to a world that had never asked his opinion of kings or taxes. But lately, every conversation in town, in the tavern, at the docks, even in church, carried the same question. How long could a man be ruled without his consent? His master, old Josiah Pritchard, muttered as he worked the bellows, "Mark my words, lad, the crown won't take kindly to tea in the harbor." Thomas lifted the blade, cooling it in a trough of water. Steam hissed upward. "They shouldn't have taxed it so heavily, sir." Josiah gave him a sidelong glance. "Careful, boy. Words like that can earn you a noose if spoken too loud." Thomas fell silent, but his thoughts burned hotter than the forge. He had watched from a distance 2 nights ago as men disguised as Mohawk Indians boarded the ships and dumped crate after crate East India Company tea into the sea. He had not joined them. Fear and doubt kept him rooted where he was, yet the sight had left him trembling. It was reckless, yes, but thrilling. For the first time, ordinary men had defied the empire itself. That evening, after closing the shop, Thomas walked down to the tavern by the harbor. The sign above the door swung wildly in the wind. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of ale and pipe smoke. Men spoke in low tones around wooden tables, their faces lit by flickering candles. "Samuel," Thomas called out, spotting his childhood friend near the hearth. Samuel Turner, lean and fiery-eyed, was speaking animatedly to a group of townsmen. "Thomas, you came!" Samuel clapped his shoulder and lowered his voice. "Did you see the harbor? The king's men are furious. They'll send soldiers for sure." Thomas frowned. "You sound almost glad of it." "Glad?" Samuel's eyes flashed. "I'm alive with it. Don't you see? This is how liberty begins. A people pushed to the edge will finally stand." "Or fall," Thomas muttered. Before Samuel could reply, the tavern door opened with a loud creak. Conversation stopped. A group of red-coated soldiers stepped in, led by a tall officer whose polished boots gleamed in the firelight. His face was calm, almost weary as he surveyed the room. "Good evening, gentlemen," the officer said. His accent was crisp and unmistakably English. "I trust we're all loyal subjects here." The men at the tables avoided his gaze. Samuel's jaw tightened, but Thomas gave a respectful nod. "Of course, sir. We're blacksmiths and farmers, not politicians." The officer's eyes lingered on him for a moment. "Wise words. The empire rewards those who keep their heads." He turned to leave, but then glanced back. "Name's Captain William Harcourt, and you are—" "Thomas Hale." "Good trade, the forge. "I may have need of your services, Mr. Hale. My regiment requires shoeing for our horses." Thomas nodded slowly. "I'll be honored to serve, sir." When the soldiers left, Samuel exhaled sharply. "Honored to serve? You'd work for them?" Thomas's jaw clenched. "It's honest work, Sam. I feed my family with my hands, not with slogans." Samuel leaned forward. "And when those same hands are ordered to build chains for your countrymen, what then?" Thomas said nothing. The question followed him all the way home through the silent streets. Later that winter, snow blanketed the town in silence, but the quiet was deceiving. British patrols marched daily, their boots crunching the ice like thunder. In the taverns, secret meetings continued. In the churches, whispers replaced hymns. The colonies were splitting at their seams. Thomas spent long hours at the forge, his hammer ringing out like a heartbeat. Captain Harcourt came often, polite, intelligent, and curiously gentle for a man of war. They spoke sometimes of England, sometimes of faith, sometimes of the burden of duty. Thomas found himself respecting the man, even as resentment toward the soldiers around him grew. One afternoon, Harcourt lingered by the door, watching Thomas shape a musket barrel. "You work with precision, I see. A craftsman's pride, I wager." Thomas wiped his brow. "It's not pride, sir, just necessity." "Necessity," Harcourt smiled faintly. "A word both sides use often these days." Thomas hesitated, then said quietly, "Do you believe what your parliament does is just?" The question hung between them like smoke. Harcourt's face remained calm, but his eyes darkened. "I believe in order, Mr. Hale. Without it, men become beasts, and I believe your countrymen underestimate the chaos they invite." "Maybe, but sometimes order can be its own kind of chain." For a moment, they stood in silence, the hiss of the forge filling the air. Then Harcourt nodded slightly, as though conceding a hidden truth. "Perhaps, but the world rarely rewards those who challenge their masters." That night, as Thomas walked home, he saw a column of soldiers hauling crates through the snow, powder, muskets, and iron. Watching from the shadows, he realized the war was no longer something whispered in taverns. It was coming, steady as the tide. When he reached his door, his mother met him with a trembling letter in her hands. "It's from Samuel," she said. Thomas opened it carefully. Inside was a single line written in haste. "They're meeting in Concord. Bring what courage you have left." He stood there a long time, the ink trembling in the candlelight. Outside, the wind howled like a warning, but deep inside him, something began to shift, the faint but undeniable echo of liberty calling his name.